Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea marks the 40th anniversary of the Gwangju pro-democracy movement, in which Korean protesters calling for democracy were killed by the authoritarian regime of the time. President Moon calls for the truth to finally be revealed. President Moon is set to give a keynote speech to the World Health Assembly, the first by a sitting South Korean leader. He's expected to call for global cooperation to develop vaccines and treatments for the coronavirus. And South Koreans can now apply any day of the week for their coronavirus relief payments. Small businesses can also apply for a second round of emergency loans if they missed out on the first round. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. 40 years ago on this day in Gwangju, South Korea, hundreds of citizens protesting for democracy were killed and thousands more injured in a brutal military crackdown under the authoritarian regime of Chun Doo-hwan. Marking the 40th anniversary of the Gwangju pro-democracy movement, President Moon Jae-in has called for those responsible for the crackdown to reveal the truth, and he expressed hopes for the movement to be inscribed in the Constitution. Kim Mo-gyun reports.
Marking the 40th anniversary of the Gwangju pro-democracy movement, President Moon Jae-in attended a commemorative event which for the first time was held in front of the May 18 Democracy Square in Gwangju, the heart of the movement. There, President Moon paid respect to those who fought for the nation's democracy and called for those responsible for the bloody crackdown on pro-democracy protesters in Gwangju to step up and reveal the truth.
처벌이 목적이 아닙니다. 역사를 올바로 기록하는 일입니다. 이제라도 용기를 내어 진실을 고백한다면 오히려 용서와 화해의 길이 열릴 것입니다.
Citing the launch of a probe by an independent fact-finding commission last week, Moon promised his utmost support for the investigation and also vowed to continue efforts to search for the missing, as well as compensate and restore the honor of the victims. To better acknowledge the event, President Moon also expressed hopes to inscribe the historic value and significance of the Gwangju movement into the nation's constitution.
헌법 전문에 5.18 민주화운동을 새기는 것은 5.18을 누구도 훼손하거나 부정할 수 없는 대한민국의 위대한 역사로 자리매김하는 일입니다.
President Moon also took to the podium to express gratitude to the Gwangju residents, whom he said showed the spirit of the pro-democracy movement even during the COVID-19 pandemic, by taking the lead to offer beds for patients in Daegu, one of the areas hardest hit by the outbreak in South Korea. He said that spirit has become the source of South Korea's strength, helping it become a global role model in dealing with COVID-19. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
And President Moon will deliver a keynote address this evening at the virtual World Health Assembly, the WHO's decision-making body. He'll be sharing South Korea's experience in fighting COVID-19 based on three principles: openness, transparency, and democracy. He's also expected to call for global cooperation to develop vaccines and treatments. The WHO Director General asked President Moon to give the keynote speech last month when the two spoke on the phone. This keynote speech will be the first at the World Health Assembly by a sitting South Korean president. Starting today and for the next 8 weeks, all incoming draftees in the South Korean military will be screened for the coronavirus, whether they have symptoms or not. Seoul's Defense Ministry said the measure is aimed at preventing cluster infections. On the first day, they've tested some 3,800 draftees. As of Monday morning, the military had reported no new cases of the virus for the third day in a row. There are still 12 people getting treatment for it, all of them linked to the cluster infection from nightclubs in the Seoul neighborhood of Itaewon. 39 in the military have recovered. South Korea is resuming a general crackdown on drunk driving starting this Monday. Until late January, there had been roadblocks in place to check all drivers coming through, but that was stopped because of the coronavirus and the risk of having people blow directly onto a breathalyzer. Now the police have developed a device on a wand that can get a result 30 centimeters from the driver's face. If it detects intoxication, but the driver denies it, then the police will use an ordinary breathalyzer to check again. People in South Korea can now apply for emergency COVID-19 relief funds not only online but also offline at their local bank. They can expect banks to be swamped, though, because a second round of relief loans for small businesses is also starting. Choi Jung-yoon reports.
Starting Monday, small businesses in South Korea struggling as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak can apply for a second round of low-interest relief loans if they didn't apply the first time. According to the Financial Services Commission, business owners can apply at 7 major banks, including Kookmin, Shinhan, and Uri Bank. The total amount of loans provided will amount to $8.1 billion. The interest rate for this batch is around 3 to 4%, twice as high as the previous batch, which was 1.5%. However, many are still expected to apply as the rate is still low compared to the open market, and 1 million people will be eligible. Those who already received the first batch of loans or have overdue debt are excluded, and the rate will depend on the small business's credit rating. Offline applications for emergency COVID-19 relief funds also begin Monday. Households who did not apply online last week will be able to apply for the one-time payout at banks related to the debit card they're using. A 5-day rotation policy is in place to prevent overcrowding. Those with a 1 or 6 at the end of their birth year are eligible to apply on Monday. The payment will be given out in the form of card points 2 days after they apply. 6,500 branches of 14 banks are open nationwide to accept applications. As the application for the relief loans and funds are beginning at the same time, banks have raised concerns about possible COVID-19 infections and have asked visitors to all wear face masks and follow quarantine measures. Choi Jung-yoon, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news on this Monday, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, thank you for making time today.
Happy to be here.
Well, stocks on Wall Street ended higher on Friday on expectations that consumption will improve down the road. Korean stocks higher today, too. What's the story in the stock markets?
Okay, well, Kospi was, as you mentioned, up today 0.51%. But for the last week, it was going up and down. It was basically in a holding pattern. Kosdaq, it's doing very well. It's recovered to almost the pre-coronavirus February levels. It's doing even better than NASDAQ. And I think that shows how Korean economy seems to be turning around, though the problems that we may have with exports hasn't really hit the stock markets yet. Now, the United States, last week, overall, it was very bad for the week, even though there was slight recovery at the end of the week. It's probably because the Fed Chairman Powell reminded the market that the effect from coronavirus is likely to be long-lasting, probably up to 2021. Now, this actually should have been old news. People have been saying this for quite a while, but I guess it does show that people in the stock market tend to get too optimistic at times. The Asian market was today up slightly because of optimistic statement by Fed Chairman Powell on Sunday that the rebound will be relatively quick and Fed still has tools they can use. So I guess we can expect the U.S. market to go up somewhat today. Now, Japan, they found last week that the first quarter was for them a recession, so they were downward for the week. China and the UK and Europe, they were similar with the United States. They were more or less in the holding pattern.
In the meantime, it seems the U.S. and China are heading into another trade war, and the first one did a lot of damage to Korea's exports. Now, with the Trump administration looking to cut off Huawei from its chip suppliers, what kind of effect is that going to have on the Korean economy?
Okay, well, specifically, the United States will require that American and non-American companies which use U.S.-made software or equipment to produce semiconductors must get licenses if they want to export semiconductors to Huawei. The United States has also warned that it is not likely to grant those licenses. So the move is expected to reduce the number of smartphones and electronics produced by Huawei. Korean firms are not expected to be covered by President Trump's order because, well, we produce memory chips and we do not use as much U.S.-made equipment and U.S. software as the companies which make so-called system semiconductors or non-memory chips, but Korean firms may be hit indirectly because, well, if Huawei makes less smartphones or less equipment, then Korean firms will export less memory chips that goes into those smartphones and equipment. Though some analysts are saying that Samsung may gain from the President Trump's order because it opens up perhaps some markets for Samsung smartphones and Samsung equipment for 5G. 5G. But I tend to have a bit of a doubt about that. Huawei's market share has been going down for the last couple of years, mostly because of President Trump's pressure on Huawei. And in order for Samsung to really take advantage of Huawei's reduction in production for smartphones, Samsung has to crack the Chinese market, but it seems doubtful that China will start buying Samsung phones because, well, a lot of their purchases of smartphones have to do with low prices as well as patriotism, and Samsung, I don't think, has the right tools or the right smartphones to crack into that market.
Well, in the next few days, South Korean high school seniors will be going back to class. We'll also have economic statistics coming out on Korean households. Tell us a bit about what's coming up this week.
Okay, well, the household debt is obviously the most important because how badly the Koreans are in debt, household is in debt, will determine how strong the comeback in consumption will be as Korea moves out of social distancing. But also another very interesting material will be KDI's economic forecast for the first half of the year. Now, it is expected that they will also announce what their prediction will be for economic growth in 2020 and 2021. If you'll remember, KDI as well as the government said that this year's growth rate will be 2.1%. I don't think anybody believes that anymore. Right now, the betting is that the government will settle on a target of positive growth rate, but in the 0% range. We'll have to see whether KDI agrees with that assessment. So far, the economic growth rate projections by international investment banks for Korea for 2020 has ranged from minus 6.5 to plus 0.5%. So we'll have to see where KDI will place itself on that range. And then for foreign statistics, I guess the most important statistics will be U.S. and European purchasing managers indices, because that will give indication on how much, at what capacity factories in the United States and Europe will be running, and that'll give us indication on how badly the coronavirus has affected production in U.S. and Europe, as well as whether they're seeing any positive signs, because some of the U.S. states and some of the European countries are going off shutdown and lockdown.
Indeed. We'll be watching for those numbers. Professor Young, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights today.
Thank you.
Now, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell says the U.S. economy might start to bounce back in the third quarter, but a full recovery might not be possible until there's a COVID-19 vaccine. This was in an interview Sunday with the CBS program 60 Minutes. As for a vaccine, the director of Johns Hopkins University's Center for Health Security says one could be developed by the end of the year. Speaking to broadcaster NBC, Dr. Tom Inglesby said such rapid development is not realistic under normal circumstances, but this unique situation might make it possible. South Korea is holding a 3-week virtual job fair starting today to connect job seekers and employers in these difficult times. 34 small and medium-sized enterprises are taking part and are expected to hire some 300 people. The entire recruitment process, from applications to final interviews, is being done online with no in-person contact. It's being held by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy together with the Federation of Middle Market Enterprises of Korea and Industrial Bank of Korea. More information can be found on the job fair's website. Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong, the tech giant's de facto leader, resumed his overseas business trips on Monday with a visit to a semiconductor plant in China. This is his first business trip abroad in 4 months. Having tested negative for the coronavirus, Lee left for China on Sunday under an agreement between Seoul and Beijing to simplify entry procedures for business travel starting in May. The plant he's visiting is in the city of Xi'an. With the surge in demand for Korean-made protective gear, South Korea exported more protective suits last month in terms of value than in the past 2 decades combined. Specifically, these are protective suits made of non-woven fabrics of the type used by medical workers. According to the Korea Customs Service, South Korea exported over $19 million worth of them in April. This is 327 times the amount exported in April last year and is more than the total amount exported between the year 2000 and 2019. The South Korean government is moving to stabilize the price of fishery products during the off-season by releasing supplies from its reserves. The Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries says it'll supply a total of around 6,070 tons of 6 products, including pollock, mackerel, and squid, from today through June 10th. Their prices will be 10 to 30% lower than usual. They'll first reach consumers through traditional markets, large-scale distributors, and home shopping companies, and the remaining amount will be distributed through wholesale markets or the electronic bidding system. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.